I'm Daniel Brooks. I'm 36. Last Thursday, I pulled into my driveway after work and saw a U-Haul truck parked halfway across my lawn like it had every right to be there. The back gate was already open. Boxes stacked inside. Furniture wrapped in moving blankets. My father stood near the porch with his hands on his hips, scanning the house like he was inspecting a property he'd just bought. My mother was on the front steps, holding the door open. And my younger brother, Eric, was carrying a mattress through my front door like he lived there. I didn't turn off the engine right away. I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring at my own house being taken over in real time. Then my mom looked up and saw me. Her expression didn't change. Not surprising. Not guilt. Just recognition, like I'd shown up earlier than expected. "Oh good," she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You're home." We were just getting Eric settled. Settled. In my house. My dad nodded like this was already decided. "It's temporary," he added, like that made it reasonable. "He needs a place. You've got space." Eric didn't even stop moving. He walked right past my mother into the hallway, balancing the mattress like he'd done it 100 times. I finally turned off the engine. Stepped out of the car. Closed the door slowly. And for a second, standing there in my own driveway, I felt like I was the one trespassing. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that every single thing happening on that lawn, on that porch, inside that house, was being recorded. Before I take you back and show you how this even got to this point, if this kind of story hits close to home, take a second to like and subscribe to Women Reddit Stories, but only if you actually connect with it. And tell me where you're watching from. I read those comments more than you'd think. Now let me take you back 3 years. Because none of this started with that truck. It started the day I bought the house. It's a 2-story colonial on Birchwood Drive in a suburb about 25 minutes outside Columbus, Ohio. White brick, dark green shutters, a narrow front porch with 2 columns I had to repaint twice because I didn't like the finish the first time. 3 bedrooms. 1 office. A backyard that slopes just enough to flood if the drainage isn't maintained, which I learned the hard way my first spring there. The listing was $265,000. I put down $53,000. 20%. Every dollar came from my savings. Overtime shifts. Side consulting work. Years of saying no to things I wanted because I had a plan. The mortgage is in my name. The insurance is in my name. Every bill, every repair, every tax payment, mine. The day I signed the closing documents, I sat in my car in the parking lot outside the title office and just stared at the keys in my hand. They felt heavier than they should have. Not physically. Just what they meant. I called my parents. "Hey," I said, trying not to sound like my voice was shaking. "I just closed. I bought a house." There was a pause on the other end. Then my mom said, "That's nice, honey. Eric's been having a rough time lately. Did I tell you he lost that job at the dealership?" I remember looking down at the keys in my hand. The ink on the paperwork wasn't even dry yet. And somehow, the conversation had already moved past me. I told her the address. She said they'd come see it soon. They never did. Not once. 3 years in that house, repainting walls, fixing plumbing, replacing the water heater myself after watching 3 different tutorials, and my parents never stepped foot inside. But they knew how many bedrooms it had. They always knew that. Eric is 3 years younger than me. Growing up, that gap felt like a lifetime. He got away with things I never would have even tried. If he messed up, there was always a reason. Always an explanation. Always someone else to blame. When I turned 16, I bought my first car with money from a summer job and help from a small loan I paid back within a year. When Eric turned 16, my dad surprised him with a brand new truck. Daniel's more responsible, my mom said when I brought it up. You understand how to work for things. At the time, I took that as a compliment. I didn't realize it was also an expectation. An expectation that I would always be the one who figured things out. And Eric would always be the one who needed help. After college, I got a job in IT support. Entry level. Long hours. Low pay. But I stuck with it. Took certifications at night. Moved up slowly. 8 years later, I was a systems analyst for a regional healthcare network. Stable. Reliable. Predictable. Eric bounced between jobs. Sales. Delivery. Warehouse. Customer service. Each one ended the same way: bad management, unfair expectations, someone out to get him. Last year, his girlfriend left. They'd been together almost 5 years. Lived in an apartment across town. When she moved out, she took most of the furniture and left Eric with rent he couldn't afford. He moved back in with my parents. At first, it was supposed to be temporary. Then months passed. Then a year. And nothing changed. 2 weeks before I saw that U-Haul in my driveway, my mom called me on a Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen, heating up leftovers, when my phone buzzed on the counter. "Daniel," she said, skipping any kind of greeting. "We need to talk about Eric." Those words never lead anywhere good. "He's struggling," she continued. "It's not good for him to be stuck here. He needs his own space." I leaned against the counter. "Okay. You have 3 bedrooms. There it was. I didn't respond right away. "You work all the time," she added. "You don't even use the extra rooms." "It's my house, Mom." "We're not saying it isn't. But that's exactly what it felt like." "We're just saying it makes sense," she said. "He could stay with you for a while. Get back on his feet." He's been getting back on his feet for 10 years. Silence. Then my dad's voice came through in the background. "Tell him to stop being selfish." My grip tightened on the edge of the counter. "I'm not moving out of my own house so Eric can move in." "You wouldn't have to move out," my mom said quickly. "Just make space." "Make space. For how long?" I asked. "Until things stabilize." "When has that ever happened?" Another pause. I could hear my dad muttering something under his breath. Then my mom's tone shifted, softer, heavier. "So you're just going to let your brother fail?" That line. It always comes down to that. Like my success automatically means I owe something. "I'm not responsible for fixing his life," I said. "You're his family. And this is my home." The line went quiet. No goodbye. No resolution. Just silence. I stood there in my kitchen, the microwave beeping behind me, and told myself that was the end of it. That they'd be upset for a while. That they'd move on. I should have known better. Because when my parents go quiet, it's never accepted. It's planning. And I had no idea how far they were willing to go until the day my phone buzzed at work, and everything started to unravel. The next day started like any other Wednesday. I got to work a little before 8:30, grabbed coffee from the break room that tasted like burnt cardboard, and settled into my desk. Nothing unusual. No missed calls. No messages from my parents. No follow-up from that conversation the night before. If anything, it was too quiet. By mid-morning, I was deep into a network audit report I'd been putting off for 2 days. Numbers, logs, system checks, the kind of work that keeps your brain occupied enough to ignore everything else. Around 11:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. I glanced down automatically. Front door camera, motion detected. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. Package deliveries usually hit later in the afternoon. And even then, they didn't trigger that kind of alert unless someone lingered. I hovered over the notification for a second. Then my manager called my name from across the room. "Daniel, you got a minute?" I locked my phone and slid it face down on the desk. "Yeah." That minute turned into a 40-minute conversation about a server migration timeline that could have been handled in an email. By the time I got back to my desk, I had almost forgotten about the notification. Almost. My phone lit up again as I sat down. Front door camera, motion detected. Same alert. Now my chest tightened just a little. I picked up the phone and opened the app. The footage loaded. Timestamp, 11:13 a.m. My front porch came into view. And there was Eric. Standing right in front of my door. He looked around once, quick glance to the left, then right, like someone checking if they were being watched. Then he reached into his pocket. And pulled out a key. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. That was my spare key. The one I gave my parents 2 years ago. For emergencies, I'd said. He slid it into the lock. Opened the door. And walked into my house. Just like that. No hesitation. No second thought. Like it belonged to him. I stared at the screen, my hand tightening around my phone. The camera caught everything. Eric stepped inside. Closing the door behind him. And then. Nothing. The feed switched to idle. I didn't breathe for a second. Then I switched to the interior camera, the one mounted in the hallway near the living room. The video loaded. And there he was. Inside. Walking through my house. He moved slowly at first. Looking around. Taking it in. Then he started opening doors. First the coat closet. Then the hallway closet. Then the door to my office. He stepped inside, glanced around at my desk, my monitors, the cables neatly organized along the wall. He didn't touch anything. Just observed. Then he moved to the kitchen. Opened my refrigerator. Stood there for a few seconds, staring inside like he was already planning what groceries he'd need. Closed it. Walked over to the sink. Turned the faucet on. Checked the water pressure. Turned it off. I could feel my pulse in my ears now. He wasn't just looking. He was evaluating. Like he was inspecting a place he planned to live in. Then he walked down the hallway toward the bedrooms. The camera angle shifted just enough to catch him stepping into the master bedroom. He stopped in the doorway. Pulled out his phone. And started recording. Slow pan from left to right. Closet. Bed. Windows. Everything. He was mapping it out. My house. My space. My life. Through his lens. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen like it might change if I looked away long enough. It didn't. 12 minutes. That's how long he stayed inside. 12 minutes of him walking through every room like he was deciding where to put his furniture. Then he walked back to the front door. Unlocked it. Stepped outside. Closed it behind him. And left. Like nothing had happened. I sat there in the middle of my office, surrounded by coworkers typing, phones ringing, printers running, normal life continuing like everything was fine. But nothing felt normal anymore. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't even know what I would have said. Hey, why were you inside my house without permission? There's no version of that question that sounds reasonable. I sat there for another 5 minutes. Then I opened the app again. Replayed the footage. Watched him walk through my house again. The way he moved. The way he looked at things. Like he already owned it. That's when it clicked. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't a quick look. This was preparation. I locked my phone and grabbed my keys. "Hey," I said to my manager as I stood up. "I need to step out for a bit." "Family thing." He barely looked up. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just need to handle something." The drive home felt longer than usual. Every red light stretched. Every slow driver in front of me felt intentional. By the time I turned onto Birchwood Drive, my hands were tight on the steering wheel. The house looked normal. Too normal. No cars in the driveway. No signs anyone had been there. I pulled in, got out, and walked straight to the front door. Unlocked it. Stepped inside. Silence. Everything was exactly where I left it. But it didn't feel the same. I walked through each room. Living room. Kitchen. Office. Nothing missing. Nothing broken. Then I stepped into the master bedroom. And stopped. The bedspread was slightly off. Not messy. Just shifted. Like someone had stood there longer than they needed to. I walked to the closet. Opened it. Clothes still in place. Drawers untouched. No theft. No damage. But the violation was still there. You don't need something to be stolen to feel like something was taken. Privacy counts. Control counts. And both of those were gone. I pulled out my phone and called my mom. She answered on the second ring. "Daniel." No greeting. No surprise. "Did you give Eric my spare key?" I asked. A pause. Just long enough. He wanted to see if the house would work for him. Work for him. Like we were still discussing it. "Mom," I said slowly. He went inside. He just looked around. He opened my door. "With a key you gave him?" "You're being dramatic," she said, her tone tightening. "It's not like he broke anything." I closed my eyes for a second. Behind her, I could hear the TV on. My dad is talking faintly to someone in the background. "He walked through every room," I said. "He recorded a video." "So he could plan," she replied. Plan. There it was. Out in the open. "No one asked me," I said. "We're trying to help your brother." "By letting him into my house without permission?" "He's your brother, Daniel. And this is my house." Silence. Then my dad's voice, louder now. "Tell him to stop overreacting." My grip tightened on the phone. "He doesn't get to decide what happens in my house," I said. "Family helps family," my mom replied. "Family doesn't break into your home while you're at work." Another pause. Longer this time. Then she softened her tone. The way she always does when she thinks she's about to win. "He was just looking," she said. "No one's doing anything without your approval." But I'd already seen the footage. I knew that wasn't true. This wasn't a discussion anymore. It was a plan. And I wasn't part of it. I hung up without saying goodbye. Stood there in my hallway. My house suddenly feels less like mine than it ever had. I should have changed the locks right then. That would have been the smart move. The safe move. But I didn't. Because something in me wanted to see how far they'd take it. How far they thought they could go without me stopping them. That decision was the only reason I caught what happened next. Because 2 days later, while I was at work again, they came back. And this time, Eric wasn't alone. 2 days later, Friday afternoon, everything escalated. I was on site at one of our outpatient clinics about 20 minutes from my house, helping troubleshoot a network outage that had half their systems running slow. It was the kind of problem that needed focus, servers lagging, staff frustrated, phones ringing non-stop. Around 1:47 p.m., my phone buzzed in my pocket. I stepped aside from the nurse's station and pulled it out. Front door camera, motion detected. That same alert. But this time, something in my gut dropped before I even opened it. I tapped the notification. The live feed loaded. And there they were. My dad. My mom. And Eric. All three of them were standing on my front porch. My father had the key in his hand. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I saw him slide it into the lock. The door opened. They walked inside. Like it was normal. Like they'd done it 100 times. I switched to the hallway camera immediately. The video came up. Eric was already kneeling by the front door. He had a screwdriver. And a box. A brand new lock set. Still in the packaging. For a second, my brain didn't process it. Then it hit. He wasn't just entering my house. He was replacing my lock. Right there. In the middle of the day. While I was at work. My father stood behind him, arms crossed, watching like he was supervising a project. My mom walked past them, carrying a cardboard box. She moved down the hallway toward the bedrooms. Like she knew exactly where she was going. I felt something shift inside my chest. Don't panic. Not anger. Something colder. Clearer. I started recording the screen. Every second. Every movement. Because now this wasn't just crossing a line. They were erasing it. On the camera, Eric removed the deadbolt. Set it aside. Installed the new one. Quick. Efficient. Like he'd done it before. Like he expected to be there. My dad nodded once when he finished. Approved. That was the word that came to mind. Approved. Like my house was a decision he had the authority to make. My mom came back into frame. She was holding a small stuffed animal. A blue blanket. And a pair of tiny sneakers. She knelt in the second bedroom. The one I used as a guest room. And started placing them on the floor. Arranging them. Carefully. Deliberately. Like she was setting up a child's space. I leaned against the wall of the clinic hallway, my phone shaking slightly in my hand. They weren't asking anymore. They weren't even pretending. They were moving in. Without me. Without permission. Without hesitation. 14 minutes. That's how long they stayed. 14 minutes of them turning my house into something I didn't recognize. Then they left. Locked the new door behind them. And walked off my property like nothing had happened. I stood there for a long moment after the feed went still. The clinic noise came rushing back and around me. Voices. Phones. Footsteps. But it all felt distant. Muted. Like I was underwater. I didn't call them. Not this time. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I opened the app again. Rewatched the footage. Slower this time. Detail by detail. My dad's face. Calm. Certain. My mom arranging those kids' items like she was doing something kind. Eric installing the lock like it was already his. No hesitation. No doubt. That was the moment I understood something I hadn't fully accepted before. They didn't see this as my house. They saw it as a family asset. Something to be redistributed. Something I was temporarily holding. And now. They were taking it back. I left work early. Didn't explain much. Just said I had an emergency and drove straight home. The entire drive, my thoughts were steady. Not scattered. Not emotional. Just focused. When I pulled into my driveway, everything looked the same. No truck. No cars. No signs of what had just happened. But I knew. I walked up to the front door. Took out my key. Inserted it into the lock. And it didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I stepped back slowly. Looked at the door. At the lock. Brass. Brand new. Exactly like the one I'd just watched Eric install. They locked me out of my own house. I stood there for a second. Just staring. Waiting for the feeling to hit. Anger. Shock. Something. But what I felt instead was clarity. I pulled out my phone. Scrolled through my contacts. And stopped on a name. Mrs. Evelyn Carter. She lived next door. Late 60s. Retired real estate attorney. Sharp mind. Sharper eyes. The kind of person who noticed things most people missed. I hit call. She picked up on the third ring. Daniel? Hi, Mrs. Carter, I said, keeping my voice steady. Are you home? I am. Can you step outside for a minute? There was a brief pause. Then, of course. A minute later, she came out onto her front porch. Saw me standing by my door. And immediately walked over. What's wrong? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I just handed her my phone. Opened the footage. And let it play. She watched the entire thing. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react visibly. Just watched. When it ended, she handed the phone back to me. And looked at the door. That's unlawful entry, she said calmly. And that, she nodded toward the lock, that's unauthorized modification of your property. They're my parents, I said. And that, she replied, meeting my eyes, doesn't change what this is. I exhaled slowly. They used a key I gave them, I added. 2 years ago, she said. Under specific conditions. That's not open access. That's conditional consent. She stepped closer to the door. Examined the lock. Then looked back at me. Do you have proof this is your property? Yes. Good. Because right now, you're locked out of your own home, and you have video evidence of how it happened. I nodded. My grip tightened slightly on the phone. What do I do? I asked. She didn't hesitate. First, you document everything. Every clip, every timestamp. Save it in multiple places. I already recorded it. Good. Second, you call a locksmith immediately and regain access. Legally, this is still your property. I glanced at the door again. Third, she continued, you consider filing a trespass report. I looked at her. A report against my own family? A report against 3 individuals who entered your property without permission and changed your locks, she corrected gently. There it was again. The separation. Family and facts. They're not the same thing, she added, softer now. I nodded slowly. Because I knew she was right. Even if I didn't want her to be. She placed a hand lightly on my arm. Daniel, she said, people don't get to rewrite ownership just because they feel entitled to it. I let that sit for a second. Then I took out my phone again. Scrolled to a number. And made the call. Because one thing was clear now. They weren't testing boundaries anymore. They were crossing them. And if I didn't take my house back right then, there was a very real chance I'd lose more than just a lock. The locksmith arrived at 6:10 p.m. White van. Local company. A guy named Trent, mid-40s, quiet, efficient, the kind of person who didn't ask questions unless he absolutely had to. I met him in the driveway with my ID and a printed copy of my deed. He looked at both, nodded once, and walked up to the door. This was changed recently, he said, examining the lock. Brand new hardware. I know, I replied. He didn't ask how. Didn't need to. Within minutes, he had his tools out. The sound of metal clicking, small adjustments, controlled force, not loud, not aggressive. Just precise. At 6:18 p.m., the door opened. My door. My house. I stepped inside first. That same silence hit me again. But this time, it felt different. Not violated. Reclaimed. Trent followed me in just long enough to check the internal mechanism. They installed this quick, he said, holding up the removed lock. Cheap set. Not meant for long-term use. Figures, I said. He gave me a small look, not judgmental, just understanding. Then he got to work replacing everything. Front door. Back door. Garage entry. New deadbolts. New keys. Fresh control. I stood in the living room while he worked, my phone in my hand, replaying the footage again, not because I needed to see it, but because I needed to understand it. Every second. Every decision they made. Because now this wasn't just about what they did. It was about what they planned to do next. By 6:52 p.m., Trent was done. He handed me 3 sets of keys. All yours, he said. I paid him in cash. He nodded once and left without another word. The house was mine again. Legally, it always had been. But now. It felt like it. I locked the front door. Tested it twice. Then walked down the hallway toward the second bedroom. The guest room. Or at least, it had been. I pushed the door open slowly. And there it was. The setup. Small. But intentional. A folded blue blanket on the bed. A stuffed dinosaur placed carefully on the pillow. Tiny sneakers lined up against the wall. Not random. Not careless. Deliberate. They hadn't just entered my house. They had started transforming it. I stepped inside. Picked up the blanket. Ran my hand over the fabric. It wasn't mine. None of it was. But it wasn't trash either. It belonged to kids. Eric's kids from his previous relationship. I wasn't angry at them. They didn't ask for any of this. I carried everything out of the room. One item at a time. Set it down carefully on the workbench in the garage. Not thrown. Not destroyed. Just removed. Because that room wasn't theirs. And it wasn't going to become theirs without my say. When I went back inside, the house felt different again. Cleaner. Not physically. But mentally. Defined. I walked through each room. Checked every window. Every door. Every lock. Everything secured. Then I went into the kitchen. Set my phone on the counter. And pulled up the footage again. This time, I focused on one moment. Near the end. Right before they left. My mom was standing in the hallway. Close to the camera. Her voice was low. But the audio picked it up just enough. I turned the volume all the way up. Held the phone closer. And listened. She'll come around, she said. Not unsure. Not hopeful. Certain. She always does. I set the phone down slowly. And stared at the counter. Because that one sentence explained everything. Every decision. Every assumption. Every line they crossed without hesitation. They didn't think I'd stop them. They thought I'd adjust. Compromise. Give in. Like I always had before. That's why they didn't ask. That's why they didn't wait. Because in their minds, this was already settled. I leaned back against the counter. Crossed my arms. And let the silence sit. For a long time. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. A message. From my mom. Family group chat. The one with my parents, Eric, a few relatives, cousins, an aunt who commented on everything. I opened it. Mom. Please keep our family in your prayers. Daniel is refusing to help his brother in a time of need. We've tried everything, but he's chosen selfishness over family. I read it once. Then again. Slowly. Carefully. Every word calculated. Every phrase designed. Not just to inform, but to frame. I could already imagine the responses. And they came exactly as expected. Aunt Karen. That's really disappointing. Family should come first. Uncle Mark. Eric's been through enough. He deserves support. Cousin Leah. I don't understand why you wouldn't help him, Daniel. I didn't respond. Didn't type. Didn't react. I just took screenshots. Every message. Every timestamp. Because this wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a narrative. And they were building it without me. Then another message came in. Private. From Eric. Man, it's just a house. You've got space. I've got kids. Why are you making this harder than it needs to be? I stared at that message. Just a house. 3 words. That erased years of work. Sacrifice. Ownership. I typed a response. Deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. Then I locked my phone. Set it down. And made coffee. Because I wasn't going to argue over text. Not when I had something stronger than words. Proof. I drank the coffee slowly. Sat at the kitchen table. And thought. Not about what they'd done. That part was clear. But about what they were going to do next. Because people who go this far don't stop easily. And they hadn't gotten what they came for. Which meant they'd try again. The next morning, I woke up at 6:30. Didn't sleep much. Didn't need to. My mind was already moving. I checked the cameras. Everything clear. No movement overnight. Good. I got dressed. Grabbed my keys. Paused at the door. And looked around the house. Still mine. Still intact. Still under my control. For now. Then I stepped outside. Locked the door behind me. And headed to work. But I didn't shake the feeling in my chest. That quiet, steady awareness. That something wasn't finished yet. Because people who believe they're entitled don't give up after one setback. They escalate. And I had a feeling. The next move they made wasn't going to be quiet. Saturday morning came faster than I expected. 6:52 a.m., I was already awake. Not because I had to be. Because I couldn't not be. I made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table. Checked the cameras again. Nothing. Still quiet. But it wasn't the kind of quiet that calms you down. It was the kind that makes you wait. At 7:18 a.m., my phone buzzed. Another message in the family group chat. I opened it. Mom. We're coming by today to get Eric properly settled. Let's not turn this into something bigger than it needs to be. No question. No request. Just a statement. Like plans had already been finalized. Like my input wasn't required. I read it twice. Then locked my phone. Didn't respond. Didn't argue. Because something told me this wasn't going to be handled through messages. Around 8:30, I stepped outside onto the porch. The air was cool, early fall. Leaves just starting to turn. Quiet street. A couple walking their dog down the block. A kid riding a bike past the corner. Normal. Almost too normal. I sat down on the porch step with my coffee. And waited. At 9:03 a.m., I heard it. That low, heavy rumble of a truck engine turning onto the street. I didn't move. Didn't stand up. Just watched. The U-Haul came into view first. Large box truck. White with orange lettering. Slowing as it approached my house. Then stopping directly in front of it. Behind it, my dad's truck. Same one he'd had for years. Same one he used like a symbol of authority. The engine shut off. The door opened. Eric stepped out of the U-Haul. Walked straight to the back. Rolled the gate up. Inside, furniture. A couch. A bed frame. Boxes stacked tight. A small dresser. Everything packed and ready. Not a trial run. Not temporary. This was a move. My dad got out of his truck next. Adjusted his jacket. Looked at the house like he was about to take possession of it. My mom stepped out last. Sunglasses on. Purse in hand. Calm. Prepared. Like she was arriving at a planned event. I stood up slowly. Set my coffee mug down on the porch railing. And walked down the steps. 3 steps. That's all it took to close the distance. I stopped halfway between the porch and the driveway. Close enough to be heard. Far enough to keep space. Eric didn't look at me at first. He was already reaching into the truck. Grabbing a box. My dad walked toward me. Steady. Confident. Let's not make this difficult, he said. Like I was the problem. Not the truck. Not the plan. Me. I met his eyes. This isn't happening. Simple. Clear. No room for interpretation. My mom stepped forward slightly. Daniel, she said, that controlled tone slipping in, we talked about this. No, I replied. You talked. I said no. Eric let out a quiet exhale behind them. Like he was already tired of the resistance. Man, come on, he said. We've been through this. Exactly, I said. And nothing changed. He set the box down. Finally looked at me. You've got extra space. I don't. This solves both problems. No, I said. This creates one. My dad's jaw tightened. We raised you better than this. There it was. The shift. From logic to guilt. I bought this house, I said. I pay for this house. This is my decision. My mom shook her head slightly. You're thinking about this the wrong way. No, I said. I'm thinking about it exactly right. Across the street, I noticed movement. Mrs. Carter standing near her driveway. Watching. Next door, the Hendersons had paused their morning yard work. Not obvious. But aware. This wasn't private anymore. My mom noticed too. And that's when her tone changed. Not softer. Louder. More performative. Daniel, she said, projecting now, your brother has children. He needs stability. You have more than enough space here. There it was. The audience. She wasn't just talking to me anymore. She was building a narrative. Right there on the front lawn. I felt something settle inside me. Not nerves. Not hesitation. Just clarity. This is my house, I said, steady, controlled. And no one is moving in. Eric ran a hand through his hair. You're really going to do this? He asked. I already did. My dad stepped forward. Reaching into his pocket. Pulling out a key. The old one. The one that didn't work anymore. He walked past me. Up the steps. To the front door. Like I wasn't even there. Like my words didn't matter. He inserted the key. Turned it. Nothing. Tried again. Nothing. A pause. Small. But noticeable. Eric stepped up behind him. Pulled out his key. The one from the new lock he installed. He tried it. Nothing. He looked at the door. Then at me. What did you do? I fixed it, I said. My dad turned slowly. You changed the locks. I changed them back, I corrected. Silence. Not loud. But heavy. The kind that shifts everything. My mom's expression flickered. Just for a second. Then she recovered. This is unnecessary, she said quickly. We're not trying to take anything from you. You already did, I said. You went into my house. You changed my locks. That was temporary, she replied. It was illegal. That word landed differently. Sharper. Real. My dad straightened slightly. You're going to accuse your own family of something like that? I'm stating what happened. Eric looked between us. Then let out a short laugh. You're seriously going to make this a legal thing? I held his gaze. If you don't leave, yes. That stopped him. Not completely. But enough. Behind them, the street had gone quieter. Not empty. Just watching. Because scenes like this don't stay invisible. They draw attention. And my mom knew that. Which is why she took one step back. Turned slightly toward the street. And raised her voice. We're just trying to help him, she said, emotional now. He won't even let his own brother have a place to stay. There it was. The performance. The framing. The version of the story she wanted everyone to hear. I didn't react. Didn't argue. Didn't raise my voice. Because this wasn't about convincing her. Or them. It was about control. And I still had it. For now. I reached into my pocket. Pulled out my phone. And unlocked it. My dad watched me carefully. What are you doing? He asked. I didn't answer. Just opened the app. Pulled up the footage. The same clips I'd watched over and over again. The same evidence they didn't know I had. Then I looked up. At all three of them. And said the one thing. That changed the entire situation. It's all on camera. The shift was instant. Eric froze. My dad's expression tightened. And my mom. For the first time since this started. Had nothing to say. Because now. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was proof. And everything they'd done. Was about to catch up with them. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Not my dad. Not my mom. Not Eric. Just the three of them standing there, processing what I'd said. It's all on camera. You could see it land. Not as confusion. Not as denial. As realization. Eric was the first to react. What do you mean, on camera? He asked, but his voice didn't carry the same confidence as before. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't step closer. I mean Thursday, I said calmly. 1:47 in the afternoon. You used the spare key. Walked through every room. Filmed everything. Eric's jaw tightened. I kept going. Then Friday, I added. You came back. All three of you. Dad unlocked the door. You installed a new lock. Mom set up the second bedroom. My dad looked at the ground. Just for a second. But it was enough. You're exaggerating, my mom said quickly, her voice sharper now. That's not what happened. I held her gaze. I have the footage. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. Because words can be argued. Twisted. Rewritten. But video. Video doesn't care what your version of the story is. Across the street, Mrs. Carter had stepped closer to the edge of her driveway. Watching. Not interfering. Just present. My dad cleared his throat, trying to regain control. You're really going to do this, he said. Call the police on your own family? I didn't answer right away. I let the silence sit. Because that question wasn't about understanding. It was about pressure. About making me hesitate. Making me second guess. But I'd already crossed that point. I'm going to call the police on 3 people trespassing on my property, I said finally. Simple. Direct. Accurate. My mom's expression changed. The emotion came back fast. Tears. Shaking hands. Voice breaking just enough. You would do that to us, she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. After everything we've done for you? There it was. The last move. Guilt. Public guilt. Designed to make me back down. To make me look like the villain. Eric shook his head. This is insane, he muttered. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I didn't argue. Didn't defend. I just pulled out my phone. And dialed. The sound of the call connecting felt louder than it should have. My thumb steady. My voice steady. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at 1842, Birchwood Drive, I said. There are 3 individuals on my property refusing to leave. They attempted to enter earlier. I have video evidence of prior unauthorized entry and property tampering. I could feel their eyes on me. All 3 of them. My mom's crying stopped for half a second. Then started again, louder. This is unbelievable, she said, turning slightly toward the street. He's calling the police on us. His own parents. My dad didn't say anything. He just stood there. Still. Calculating. The operator asked a few more questions. I answered clearly. Confirmed my name. Confirmed I was the homeowner. Described the situation. Officers are on the way, she said. Stay where you are. I will. I ended the call. Put the phone back in my pocket. And waited. No one spoke for a moment. The air felt different now. Heavier. More real. Because this wasn't hypothetical anymore. This wasn't a family argument. This was a situation with consequences. Eric stepped back first. Not far. Just enough. Like his body was reacting before his mind caught up. My dad exhaled slowly. Still not looking at me. My mom wiped at her face. Trying to hold on to the performance. But it wasn't landing the same way anymore. Because now there were witnesses. And not just neighbors. Authorities were coming. From across the street, Mrs. Carter finally spoke. Her voice calm. Measured. I saw them here yesterday, she said, just loud enough to carry. I can give a statement. My mom turned toward her sharply. For a split second, the tears stopped. Replaced by something colder. Then they came back again. I can't believe this, she said, shaking her head. But no one responded. Because the narrative had changed. And she knew it. Minutes passed. Not many. But enough to stretch. Every second louder than the last. Then we heard it. The distant sound of a siren. Getting closer. Eric ran a hand over his face. This didn't have to go this way, he said quietly. I looked at him. It didn't, I agreed. That was the truth. Every step of this had been avoidable. They just chose not to avoid it. The police cruiser turned onto the street at 9:24 a.m. Slowed. Pulled up in front of the house. 2 officers stepped out. 1 male. 1 female. The female officer approached first. Professional. Observant. Taking in everything in one sweep. Truck. People. Distance between us. Body language. Who made the call? She asked. I did, I said, stepping forward slightly. She nodded. What's going on? I kept it simple. I'm the homeowner. These 3 individuals are my parents and my brother. They entered my home without permission twice this week and changed my locks. I have video evidence. Today, they returned with a moving truck and are refusing to leave. She looked at me for a moment. Then at them. Do you have proof of ownership? She asked. Yes. I handed her my ID and the copy of the deed I'd kept ready. She checked both. Compared the names. Then handed them back. You're the sole owner, she confirmed. Yes. She turned to my dad. Sir, the homeowner is asking you to leave the property. My dad finally spoke. This is a family matter, he said. We're just trying to help our son. I understand, she replied evenly, but property law still applies. If the owner wants you to leave, you need to leave. Eric stepped forward slightly. I just need a place for my kids, he said. Her tone didn't change. That doesn't override ownership. My mom stepped in again. She agreed to this, she said quickly. She told us we could come. I didn't react. I just pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and handed it to the officer. This was recorded Friday at 1:47 p.m., I said. I was at work. She took the phone. Pressed play. The footage spoke for itself. My dad unlocking the door. Eric installing the lock. My mom setting up the room. Clear. Undeniable. The second officer leaned in slightly to watch. Neither of them interrupted. When it ended, the female officer looked up. Her expression still professional, but firmer now. Sir, she said to my dad, this footage shows unauthorized entry and modification of property. That can be considered trespassing and unlawful interference. My dad didn't respond. Eric stepped back another step. My mom went quiet. Completely. For the first time since this started. Mrs. Carter spoke again from across the street. I'll confirm what's in that video, she said. I saw them enter yesterday as well. The officer nodded slightly. Then looked back at my family. I need all 3 of you to leave the property, she said. Now. No debate. No room for interpretation. Just instruction. Eric moved first. Walked back to the truck. Closed the back gate. Climbed into the driver's seat. Didn't look at me. My mom followed. Still wiping her face. Still shaking her head. But saying nothing. My dad stayed for a second longer. Standing there. Looking at me. And for just a moment. The anger dropped. Not completely. But enough to show something else underneath. Something tired. Something uncertain. Then it was gone. He turned. Walked to his truck. Got in. And left. Just like that. The street went quiet again. But this time. It felt different. Not tense. Not waiting. Resolved. The officer turned back to me. Do you want to file a formal trespass warning? She asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes. Because this wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about protection. And making sure. This didn't happen again. The paperwork would come next. The fallout would come after. But for the first time since this started, I was standing in front of my house. And it actually felt like mine again. And what happened the next day made it clear. This wasn't over yet. The next day was Sunday. I woke up at 5:40 a.m. Didn't need an alarm. Didn't need coffee. My mind was already running. because I knew what was coming. My dad's birthday. Every year, the same place, a church fellowship hall about 10 minutes from my house. Folding tables. Sheet cake. Relatives. Friends. The same group of people who had watched me grow up, who knew my parents, who trusted what they said without question. And now, they'd already heard a version of what happened. Just not mine. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the counter. Part of me didn't want to go. Would have been easier to stay home. Let them talk. Let the story settle the way my mom wanted it to. But I knew how that worked. Silence doesn't stay neutral. Silence becomes agreement. And if I didn't show up, their version would become the only version. So I got dressed. Button-down shirt. Dark jeans. Clean shoes. Nothing dramatic. Just composed. Before I left, I checked my phone. Battery at 94%. Footage saved. Ready. I grabbed my keys. Paused at the door. Looked around the house one more time. Still mine. Then I locked it and left. The hall was already full when I got there. About 30 people. Maybe more. Voices, laughter, plates clinking, the normal rhythm of a family gathering. But the moment I stepped inside, it shifted. Not loudly. Not obviously. But noticeably. Conversations slowed. Eyes turned. People looked at me, then looked away just a little too quickly. That subtle distance. That quiet judgment. They'd already heard something. I walked in anyway. Didn't hesitate. Didn't shrink. Because I wasn't the one who did anything wrong. My mom was at the front of the room. Standing near the main table. Talking. Holding attention. She saw me. And for a split second, her expression tightened. Then she smiled. That same practiced smile. Controlled. Composed. My dad sat next to her. Quiet. Hands folded. Not looking at anyone directly. Eric was there too. Sitting at the edge of the table. Phone in hand. Avoiding eye contact. I didn't go to them. I took a seat at an empty table near the middle of the room. Not hiding. Not confronting. Just present. A few people approached. Careful conversations. Hey, Daniel. Good to see you. Polite. Measured. No one brought up what happened. Not yet. Then my mom stood up. Tapped her glass lightly. The room quieted. She had the floor. I just want to thank everyone for coming, she began, voice soft, controlled. It means a lot to us. A pause. A breath. Then the shift. This week has been difficult for our family. There it was. I sat still. Hands on the table. Listening. We've always tried to support each other, she continued. To make sure no one is left behind. Her eyes moved across the room. Then landed on me. And sometimes, she said, voice tightening just enough, that support isn't returned. A few murmurs. Subtle. But there. She lowered her gaze slightly. I never thought I'd see the day when one of my own children would call the police on us, for trying to help their brother. There it was. Clean. Simple. Framed. A couple people shifted in their seats. Someone sighed. I could feel the weight of it. The narrative settling. This was her version. And if I stayed silent, it would stick. She sat down slowly. My dad reached over, squeezed her hand. The room stayed quiet. Waiting. And that's when I stood up. The chair scraped slightly against the floor. Not loud. But enough. Every head turned. I didn't rush. Didn't raise my voice. I just stepped forward into the open space between the tables. I love my family, I said. Simple. True. But what you just heard. I paused. Is not the full story. My mom's expression shifted. Just slightly. I reached into my pocket. Pulled out my phone. I bought my house 3 years ago, I said. On my own. My name is the only name on that deed. I've paid every bill. Every repair. Every tax. The room was quiet. Listening now. Last week, I continued, while I was at work, my brother entered my home without permission using a spare key my parents gave him. A few heads turned toward Eric. He didn't look up. The next day, I said, all 3 of them went back. They changed my locks. They started setting up a bedroom. That hit differently. Not opinion. Not emotion. Details. I didn't agree to any of it, I added. My mom opened her mouth. I raised a hand slightly. Not aggressive. Just steady. I have video, I said. That word changed everything. Because people can doubt words. They don't doubt proof. I walked to the side of the room where a TV screen was mounted, used for presentations, slideshows, events. Connected my phone. Took a second. Then pressed play. The footage filled the screen. Clear. Undeniable. My dad unlocking the door. Eric installing the lock. My mom placing the children's items. No narration. No spin. Just what happened. The room went completely silent. No movement. No whispers. Just watching. When the video ended, I turned back to face them. No anger. No shouting. Just truth. I didn't call the police on my family, I said. I called the police on people who entered my home without permission and refused to leave. That distinction mattered. And they felt it. My mom didn't speak. For the first time. She had nothing ready. My dad stared at the table. Eric stood up quietly. Didn't say anything. Just walked out of the room. The shift in the room was immediate. Subtle. But undeniable. Not sympathy. Not judgment. Understanding. People started looking at my parents differently. Not as victims. But as something else. Something they hadn't expected to see. The party didn't recover. There were no candles. No singing. People left early. Quietly. One by one. And just like that. The story changed. The week after was quiet. Not peaceful. But quieter. I filed the formal trespass report on Monday. Everything documented. Everything official. No more ambiguity. On Wednesday, my dad called. First time since everything happened. I'm not calling to argue, he said. His voice sounded different. Less certain. I thought I was helping, he added. I leaned against the counter. You were taking, I said. A pause. Then. I see that now. Not an apology. But close. I need space, I told him. I know. We ended the call there. Eric got an apartment 2 weeks later. Small. Nothing impressive. But his. For the first time. Mom stopped texting. No more long messages. No more pressure. Just silence. And honestly, that silence felt better than anything she'd said before. 3 months later, I'm sitting on my porch. Coffee in hand. Door locked behind me. Not out of fear. Out of awareness. The camera above the door is still there. Still recording. Still watching. But now. It's just part of the house. Not a warning. Not a defense. Just a tool. I used to think being strong meant saying yes. Making things work. Keeping peace no matter what it cost. But that's not strength. That's surrender. And the moment I stopped surrendering, everything changed. Not perfectly. Not cleanly. But honestly. If your family treats your boundaries like suggestions, they're not asking. They're taking. And sometimes the only way to stop that is to stand still and say no. If this story meant something to you, take a second to like and subscribe to Women Reddit Stories, only if you genuinely connected with it. And I want to ask you something. What's one boundary you wish you had enforced sooner? Drop it in the comments. Because sometimes, hearing someone else say it is what finally makes it real.